have been in sales for about 20 years. I've sold everything but copiers and payroll. And the one thing that I have pretty much learned is a de facto default and success principle is business networking. That is literally talking about who do you know. I've done this through all different types of industries, but first I want to make sure that I tell you a little bit about the business that I am in. And the business that I am in is the you never know business. So business networking is all about really connections, relationships, and you never know. 33 years ago, I joined a fraternity at Ithaca College. And one of my fraternity brothers I have kept in touch with all throughout the years, and his success and my success and our families and kids and so forth. Last year, he asked me, after he joined this amazing company, which you may or may not know is the backbone for Amazon, which is Amazon Web Services, which is their IT offsite and security company. And so my friend Marty joined them a year ago, and his number one business requirement, he's an IT executive, and the number one business requirement they had for him in his position was to network. Now, when you hear IT or you Google IT or information technology out there, you will always come up with computer networking, and that is not the kind of networking we're here to talk about. So he was told as his task was to do business networking, and he hadn't had a clue. So he called me up, he said, Rob, I need you to come down to New York City and teach me how to network in business. From that then developed into a nice, handsome contract, and Amazon Web Services is one of my clients. So I tell you that story briefly just to identify and tell you that you never know. Business networking can be really nerve-wracking. It can be really kind of nervous. You can get really crazy about whether people are going to like me, whether they're going to say hi to me, what do I say to them, all those types of things. I'm going to go through my method and process that I teach people to do when they're in business networking. Now, when we're doing that, I want you to keep an open mind. We've all heard the adage that parachutes really don't work unless they're open. So in this intents and purposes, I'm going to go through a lot of information, and I would just like you to really keep an open mind. And if you can remain teachable for me, I will help you be memorable. But it's going to take a couple of tips and tricks. If we look at business today, I talk about it with the 3 keys of success when starting off of anything. Number one is that you have to be competent in your craft. You really have to know exactly what it is you're talking about. You need to be licensed, you need to be certified. No BS here. As you travel up the ladder of life in any kind of career, you really need to be competent in what you're talking about. The second key I talk about is to be confident. I didn't say egotistical or cocky. I said you really need to be confident about what it is that you do know and how to communicate that to others. But finally, the greatest key to success that I talk to people about is to be connected. You need to develop a business network of people that you know and they know you well to be able to tell them about your competency and do it in a confident manner. My system is based on really 4 different parts: identifying, maximizing, refining, and nurturing your network. And so there's some key components and questions that I'm going to teach you about these 4 different boxes. One is really getting at identifying your network. As an example, and maybe using LinkedIn as a guide, I want you to think about the business connections that you have on LinkedIn. Do you know them, and do they know you well? If you happen to have family and friends in your LinkedIn profile, the one classification I will allow you to make is, have you discussed business with them and family and friends in order to have them stay in your LinkedIn profile? If you haven't, then I would say swipe them out. Send them to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You're not killing these people, but you just have not talked to them about what it is you do for work, and then that's okay. But as we have our networks, what's the best way to be able to maximize that? when we were doing, and we will do again, business to business interaction and human interaction, I always endorse people to go to a diner. That's how I created my product, Networking in Diners. Get out of the coffee shops and get out of the fancy restaurants. Coffee shops are too loud and fancy restaurants can be too expensive. Go to a diner and really sit across the table from your contact and have a conversation and really ask them questions about them, which I'll get to a little bit later. So whether or not that conversation goes, mutually or not, you have to make a decision. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about organic switches and really whether or not that occurs or not. How many different meetings have we ever been in where that discussion has been one way and our contacts have really just talked and talked and talked, and hopefully it hasn't been us, but really there wasn't anything mutual there. And then finally, we talk about nurturing those connections. What is your follow-up technique? What's your plan? How do you follow up different than other people that are in your industry? I would submit that one example to be able to take care of that is a handwritten thank you note, which you can see on that quadrant right there. So when you're having a meeting with your contact, what in the world are you going to talk about? Most people are just nerve-wracked about what it is they're going to discuss. How do you like your coffee? Oh, isn't it a bright day out? Oh, COVID-19, all these different types of generic types of topics that are out there. This is really about business networking. This is finding out whether or not that business contact is a perfect fit for you or not. So I want to endorse you to have some kind of notebook, some kind of memo pad. I want you to be able to take notes in the meeting. I want you to ask them certain questions about them. And to start with, I want you to go to their LinkedIn profile, and I want you to identify 3 things that you can see on their LinkedIn profile that are curious, that are interesting, that you want to know more about. I didn't know Rob went to Ithaca College. I didn't know Rob played the clarinet in high school. I didn't know Rob was an Eagle Scout. So all those different things you can find on my LinkedIn profile if you search hard enough, but they're there and you would ask me about them. It kind of gets that rapport and that discussion going as you're having a conversation. Then from there, I want you to really take some good notes, and I want you to use a certain acronym that I'll get to in about half a minute. We can't do these things in person right now, so I would endorse you use something like Zoom. Zoom isn't the only one to use, but it's the one that I feel happens to be the simplest. For $160 a year, you can get a pro account that'll give you unlimited minutes and 100 participants. So it keeps it really simple about being able to do this kind of networking, do this kind of business to business contact interaction in a simplistic way. So we'll go through a couple of tips and tricks about Zoom meetings. They have changed drastically over the last 4 weeks. The one big takeaway I want to endorse that you think about doing is when you send that invite for a meeting on Zoom or any other meeting, always use a random meeting ID and a random password. Don't use your regular personal ID. Zoom bombing is definitely a thing out there, and you don't want to become part of it. The problem is if you do get Zoom bombed in a chat or something, you have to shut the whole session down and start over. And that would be really tragic, for like a presentation like this, like mine. You can also lock a meeting down if you happen to be the host to prevent other people from coming in. We're not doing that today because we're kind of having a relaxed environment about talking about this. So you can see from this shot, this was my former shot, so you see a little window into what the room is behind me. But I've since upgraded that. You want to dress for success just like you would a regular business meeting. We have to go to work even if it is in the space in our homes, or if we have a separate office in our homes. You want to dress just like you would if you were going to work on a virtual meeting. You can see all the different types of backgrounds and ways and people, how they dress and how they dress differently in this shot. And it just endorses that you really want to be able to have a professional persona when you're having that meeting with your contact in terms of networking, because this is what we're doing right now. When we get back to person in person, you're going to be able to sit with them at a diner, have a bottomless cup of coffee, and talk to them about them. After we ask them those 3 questions on LinkedIn on that piece of paper, I want you to use this acronym that I've developed as part of my system called FORM. I want you to take these letters and write them down the left side of the page. And they're going to ask specific pieces of your contact about their life. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So if we don't really kind of spice this up a little and really get into the nuance of them as a human, then we're going to miss an opportunity here to really create a relationship and to network with them. As we talk about F for family, we're not going to just say, tell me about your family. Why don't we ask them a pertinent question about where did they grow up, or where's home now? We want to get to the essence of where they are geographically compared to us, and maybe we've got some other friends or some other colleagues that live there. Undoubtedly, because we're talking on Zoom or we're on Google Meet or we're on WebEx and we're doing these types of things virtually, we probably know what their occupation is already. But how is it that we are going to be able to help them? So we need to ask them about their occupation a little bit. A rule of thumb that I have is that if a person has worked at their job for 2 years or more, they're either stuck or they love it. So we want to ask them, you know, I see that you've been at this job for longer than 2 years. You just really like it. Kind of a leading question to them about their position and occupation. Who knows, they might give you an answer like, well, you know what, I really need to get done with this job by Friday because I'm moving to Florida on Saturday. Or they might say, well, I'm here for a good long while, so tell me what you got and, you know, introduce me to your network that you have here. You might get varying answers on that. Recreation is not what it sounds. You're not going to just say, you know, tell me, you know, about the recreational activities that you do, but you might say, what do you like to do for fun? Now, people are probably going to default and say, well, I like to hang out with my family and my kids and my dogs and all that. But we're really looking for kind of hobbies or sports. Do you like to snow ski? Do you like to water ski? Do you like backgammon? Do you like bocce? Running, hiking? What are those different kinds of activities that you like? I had one lady who I asked the question with, and she had done macrame of all things and had the big setup in her house and the whole bit. It was interesting. And then finally, we get to who do you need to meet? It's not only the title of my book, but it's a pertinent question about this acronym because it's specific. How many times have we asked a professional contact or colleague, well, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? And although we are genuine in terms of asking that question, it's too broad, it's too vague. We want to really be specific. When we get to who is it you need to meet, when we get back out to human and human communication, that really gets specific. Well, I need to meet the managing partner of Bloom Shapiro accounting firm. I need to meet the managing partner of this law firm. You know, that's where we're going to get really specific, and that draws us down to our own network. Who do we have in our own network that really we could introduce them to? Now, I say a lot of introducing. I don't say leads and I don't say referrals. And I do that on purpose because introductions do not insinuate that a sale or somebody is going to buy our stuff. We can't make people do stuff. We can't make people like us. And we most certainly can't make people buy from us. So when we have an introduction, it's even. It's not one way or another, and we're not selling somebody something. When we have a referral and we refer a person to another, there's kind of an insinuation that a sale is going to take place, in my opinion. When we do a lead, you know, lead for me is really a number on a truck. It really isn't establishing a true relationship in business networking. So we have this acronym, we ask these questions because I want you to really think about getting out of yourself when it comes to business networking. I had to get there. I had to figure this out on my own. I was doing a lot of different networking. I sat down with a very dear friend of mine at a diner, and it's before I really kind of created this process. And he looked at me as I sat down and having a cup of coffee. And Brian said to me, "So Rob, what are you selling me today?" And I really didn't have any kind of response to that. I really didn't know what to say. I mean, what do you say to that? "Oh, well, I'm just kind of doing this and that." Obviously, he saw me as a taker. He saw me as I was always looking for him to give me something. I was always selling him. I wasn't concerned and asking questions about him. That's why I have this piece of my method and philosophy. Now, we may run into trouble when we ask our contact who is it they need to meet, or who do they need to Zoom with, or who do they need to connect with. And we may get to hear these three people. These are the three people that we don't know. Anybody, everybody, and somebody. Who do you need to meet? Anybody who's looking to buy or sell a house. Who do you need to meet? Everybody who is looking for some kind of mortgage for their house. Who do you need to meet? Well, somebody who is looking for professional photography services. Well, I don't know those three people. I know Duck. If you ask me, you need to meet Duck, well, then I'm going to introduce you to Duck. I really need to meet Bill Reed from Sikorsky Federal Credit Union. Well, so now that's getting really specific. I need to meet Bill Purcell from the Valley Chamber. That's good. That's getting specific. The whole goal here is to get them to also say a person who's specific. Well, Rob, I ask them all these questions. I'm doing all this good hard work. What happens then? Well, ultimately, I'm looking for this to happen. I created this phrase because what we're doing now is we're asking our contact, we're asking our business connection about them. We're doing it with authenticity. We're doing it with integrity. We're doing it honestly because we really want to know about them first before we show up and throw up all about us. Because it isn't about us. If we're going to create a really good, solid business relationship, we have to make sure that we know a lot about our business contact. Because really, what's the point? What is the point if we don't? What is the point if we don't invest in that contact? My experience has taught me that when we ask these good questions, we do it in a nice, simplified format. We do the research on our contact before we sit down. We make that effort. Organically, they're going to stop us. They're just going to say, okay, so wait, time out, wait. What about you? I mean, what are you doing in that job? I mean, what do you like to do for fun? I mean, I want to know more about you. And organically, they switch to asking us about us. That's the ultimate goal when we're having a business networking conversation or discussion, is looking for the organic switch. Now, we're going to kiss a lot of frogs. We're going to kiss a lot of different people that are just going to talk their ears off all day long. And that organic switch is not going to occur. So from that, then you have a decision to make, whether you want to keep them really as a mutually beneficial connection in your network, or like my slide said previously, swipe them out. You're not killing them. They're not going to die just because you swiped them out of your LinkedIn. Send them to Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Let them follow you. You follow them. It just meant that the business connection itself was just not a fit. But you have to ultimately make that decision. And I think it is an efficient and effective decision to make. So from that meeting, how are you then going to follow up? What is it you're going to do? Let's say you have a successful meeting. The organic switch happens. You've asked them good questions about them. Well, so then what? You just send them a quick text from the parking lot or a quick email and says, hey, thanks so much. It was great getting together with you. And then what? Then what happens? You know, maybe you decided on different people you needed to meet and an introduction could follow, but that's still not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how do you communicate with them to say thank you for that meeting, that breakfast, lunch, or coffee that you had. And I submit that you send them a handwritten thank you note. The success of the handwritten thank you note is labeled out on Google as 1,400 different articles are written on the success of a handwritten thank you note. Be different. Remember my slide previously. You want to be memorable. What are you going to do in your business conversation, in your connection, that's going to allow you to be more memorable than the next person? I happen to use a system after I do the initial handwritten thank you note called send out cards. It has been phenomenal for my business. It's something that makes things a little bit more creative, and it makes things a little bit more efficient when I follow up on that one-to-one meeting, especially now that we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings. I don't know about you, but I average 4 to 7 Zoom meetings a day. So this can get to be really kind of monotonous and arduous, but we've got to keep track and we've got to follow up with these business contacts in order to do these things. So I use send out cards. If you'd like to know more information about that or want to try a free card, you let me know after the presentation. We've always heard about the elevator pitch. Well, let me explain to you why the elevator pitch is so important. Because it comes down to this rule of threes. An elevator pitch really takes place in an elevator when you've got a CEO, and you've got to be able to say within 3 seconds or less exactly what you do. Well, what has ever been the purpose of the elevator pitch? This is the purpose. Because trust and sales is on a continuum. Once they figure out and you get them with that first impression of 3 seconds, then they want to know a little bit more, which leads you to 30 seconds. And hopefully when you step out of the elevator with them, that 30 seconds gets you to a minute. What are you doing right now? That's very interesting that you said that to me. Do you have a couple of minutes to come to my office or walk with me to my office? You never know. Remember I said you never know. How in a million years would I ever thought 33 years later that my fraternity brother from Ithaca College and his massive corporation was going to call on me to help him network in business better? 33 years later. Never would have thought about it ever. As we finish out this slide, I just want to tell you the very bottom piece. Because when you get to 3 minutes, you get to come back and do 3 hours for a presentation. And that's where the money is. But you've got to follow the entire continuum to be able to get there. Besides being asked the question all the time, because I teach people how to network, what do I do when I go to a major event? We're not going to talk about that today because we're doing everything virtually. But I am going to talk about LinkedIn briefly and a couple of tips and tricks that I endorse. The most salient thing about a LinkedIn profile is your professional headshot. Duck can probably talk about this all day long. First impressions, it's all about first impressions, and having a professional headshot done is going to be the #1 thing that I want you to improve or have better on your LinkedIn profile. After that, I want you to follow down with a lot of action verbs, a lot of action phrases, and don't leave any stone unturned. I'm a person who likes the dates and times. I don't care of your age. I know 2 things about effective professional networking. It doesn't care about money, and it doesn't care about age. Though ageism is a thing and a problem, if you have got a really tight connection with another professional, those 2 aspects I know for certain, professional networking cuts right through. When you have your LinkedIn profile and you've got the contact information, I want you to endorse you to fill it out as thoroughly as possible. Cell phone, address, birthday, Twitter handle, I want it all, website, I want it all on there. Because why not? You're not going to put the year you were born, just your birth date. The realtors out there, the people that have been in sales probably since the dawn of time, they all figured out a couple of things. Not only did they figure out the magnetic name badge on their uniforms, but they figured out that birthdays really do make a difference out there when you're relating to people and networking. LinkedIn is a powerful tool, but it's just a tool. Don't rely on it all the time. Finally, I will say, when you're reaching out to a contact or a new contact, please always make sure to add a note or send a personal note with that invitation and give that contact the reason why you're contacting them. Do not, under any circumstances, just hit the connect button and send it away. Unless you've established that relationship, maybe like we have here today, I still wouldn't endorse you to do that. Always send a personal invite with that invitation. You know, hope is not a strategy. I will agree with that phraseology that's happened in politics in the last several years. It's not. What we're talking about today is having hope with a purpose. You've got specific things that you can do when you're networking. You can do it virtually, you can do it in person. It does not change. You're going to dress up the same way you would if you went out to have a meeting. You're going to take good notes on a pad just like you would if you were sitting there at the diner. You're going to ask your contact questions about them and wait for that organic switch to occur. And you're going to use all these different things and tools to be able to figure out whether that contact is really, really good and effective for you. I had a business contact years ago who I wanted to meet. His name was Roger. And he was always the belle of the ball. He was always this guy. He just dressed up to the nines all the time. I had to meet him. So I asked him for an appointment. And he went to lunch with me in New Haven. We sat down and had a very nice lunch. And it's before I really had a lot of this system formulated. But I did take my business card and I wrote 3 things down on that business card and I placed it next to me. And we had a very nice lunch. And for about a half an hour, I would glance down at my card and I would ask him these questions. And about a half an hour into it, he stopped me. Now, I had just met the man and he stopped me. He said, okay, stop, hold on, time out. What is that card that you have there? What is that you keep referring to? And I said, oh, this? Well, this is just my business card, but it has your name on it, has the date and time of where we are here today. And it has 3 different questions I want to ask of you here because I wanted to make sure that I didn't waste your time. And he said to me, huh, that's really interesting. Continue, but before you do, let me say one thing. Out of 35 years that I have been in business, I have to tell you that this is the most productive lunch I've ever had. And from that then, organically, he switched and started asking me questions about me. I didn't make him do that. I didn't sell him to do that. I didn't force him to do that. He asked questions of me. And to this day, he's one of my top 10 trusted advisors here in my business today. Ask good questions. Don't make it about yourself. And wait for that organic switch. Do the research. Respect your business contact for everything they've done and they know. And I guarantee you, you will have an effective business professional, vetted business professional network going forward that you can rely on anytime, day or night. Thank you very much.